But yeah, let's jump right into it. I'm hosting this time. My name is Natalie. This is the Hyperfixation podcast, episode 0, the test pilot episode. We are still kind of like feeling around and seeing if this concept works. You may or may not know that this is Star and my second podcast, although he hosted the first one and I made him go through the like excruciating cringe of introducing Fortcast Fridays.
Yes, I have to
the
suffer that every day, every
the
week.
punny podcast name about a podcast that we used to do on Fortnite every fortnight. Hence, it was called Fortcast. We haven't done it in so long that I already forgot the intro, even though I came up with it.
Welcome to Forecast Fridays, where we play Fortnite while playing no. Welcome to Forecast Fridays, where we
See,
play Fortnite every fortnightly.
that was not it.
Yeah, it was
It
around
was
that line.
something else. It was something else, but it was around there. But yeah, this is our second podcast. I like to call it like the fun drunk cousin of Forecast Fridays, where we spend as much time as possible being as immature as possible. I'm workshopping our one line elevator pitch, as you can tell. Maybe by the next episode, when it's like episode 1 and not episode 0, I'll have it more figured out. CC, the next episode is like 0.5, right? We'll just keep going like episode 0.5, episode 0.75 until I figure out the like one line pitch and then it'll be episode 1. But yeah, how this works is that we are going to be talking about some of the hyperfixations that we have been into for the past month. We're currently experimenting with a bunch of things like whether this concept even works, how frequently we want to do it. Currently, we're thinking of doing it as a monthly thing, and we're also experimenting with like the games that we want to be playing in the background. We definitely wanted to have some kind of game because like we live in a Subway Surfers generation, and so like Power Wash is a pretty good Subway Surfers, I guess. The other option was web fishing. Well, we haven't decided. And then maybe eventually you want to have guests. But yeah, we're still like working out the bones of it. And we're gonna start off with like a really simple episode where we just kind of recap our major hyperfixations of 2024. But I think before we get into that, there's like a couple of housekeeping things. You can start power washing, by the way, if you want.
Yeah, the faster I finish, the faster this episode.
Oh god. I mean that's true. That's one of the things we want to experiment with. Cause like our old podcasts, Forecast Fridays, used to run for like 3 hours minimum. And we want to keep this going for like a maximum of 2 hours. You know? So we don't want to keep this podcast for too long. So that's one of the things we're trying out. And what's the other thing? I already forgot. Fantastic.
What
As
were
you
we
can
talking
tell,
about?
like what are you talking about? As you can tell, like hyperfixations is kind of a thing that has been a thing on my channel personally, but also in my life personally. And that's partially why the podcast is going to be hosted on my channel and on my YouTube. Definitely not because Tyra doesn't maintain his YouTube channel at all.
What is a YouTube channel? I don't know what that is.
But hyperfixation, if you didn't know, I googled it so we can read out the meaning together. But hyperfixation is a complete obsession with or absorption into a particular task. The task can be a hobby, a TV show, a subject of interest, or something else. People who hyperfixate may tune out the world around them and ignore important responsibilities. So it is one of the major symptoms of ADHD, but it's also something that a lot of regular people are into, and it's sort of been used interchangeably when people like want to talk about their interests or their obsessions or their current fandoms, and that's the entire ethos of the podcast, I guess. And because I'm hosting this time, expect it to be a completely ADHD adult experience where we're gonna be jumping around and tangenting like crazy. which has already begun because we are how many minutes into this, and we haven't introduced ourselves yet, which we should. Because I don't know, I feel like as good content creators on the internet, we have to assume that some people might be meeting us for the first time through the podcast, which is kind of
All
crazy,
through
but it
YouTube.
might happen. It might happen. So do you want to introduce yourself, Sarah? And I promise I won't make you introduce yourself every week.
Okay, fine. Hi, my name is Star101, or you can call me Darren. One of the other is fine. I am the co-founder of Chum Drinkers with Nat. I was working in marketing for a couple of years. Realized I hated it. Then again, it was during the pandemic, so that probably contributed to the hate
Contributed.
factor.
Yeah.
But regardless, I am now currently doing my degree in game development, specializing in game design. More specifically, I would like to focus on narrative and gameplay mechanics. So I am in my final year, well, going into my final year, and we are we are making a dating sim. So that'll be fun.
Maybe he'll
Apart
talk more
from
about that
that,
later.
I don't know, maybe. I mean, the game ideas, but yeah, anyways, nothing is concrete yet. Maybe during Indie Jam.
Ooh.
Haha, wink, wink, hint, hint. Um, Apart from that, I've been on Twitch for since 2019.
You're
Oh,
so
do we have a rule
old.
on? Do we have a rule on swearing?
just just swear. This is an 18 up channel. We're gonna be talking about hyperfixations. Don't you think people are gonna bring up Rule 34 like nobody's business?
True. But yeah, I've been on Twitch since 2019 during the pandemic. Uh, I think I hit affiliate very late because I never really cared about it. Like, you know how some people would do affiliate pushes and then they do like some sort of subathon? Yeah, I did a 24-hour stream on the second week of streaming for fun because I had nothing else in life happening. And I just
Yeah.
played fucking Stardew Valley or Terraria, I can't remember. It was a time. That was something. But yeah, that's who I am.
My name is Nathalie, but you can call me Nat. Most people do. I started streaming about 3 years ago, I think. And I started. I mean, it's been kind of a long like streaming journey for me. I started off like streaming when I was still working in advertising, and I guess that's partially why Sarah and I like hit it off so quickly, because we both worked in advertising, and then I quit advertising, and then now I'm working full time in like anime, comics, and games journalism, as well as anime and comics, anime cosplay, comics, games events here in Malaysia. So I've organized like so many events over the years. I guess we're best known for doing cosplay commuter here, which is a cosplay event that happened on the LRT or on the train. Um, I also organize Indie Jam annually, and then a bunch of others. Like we do a lot of like esports events, tabletop events, cosplay events here and there. There's just like a lot that we do. And I do all of that under the Magic Rain banner. I also co-founded Chum Drinkers with Stara, where we do a lot more like Twitch related and content creator stuff, mainly in support of the Southeast Asian indie gaming scene. And I guess that's like the professional introduction of my 5 jobs. I'm sure you'll hear more about it in the coming episodes, even though I will try my best not to. I
We had a rule on the podcast, so it will not be work related, and it's already being broken.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying not to, but like so much of my identity is like people knowing me from work, so it feels weird if I don't introduce the work parts of myself. Okay, here's a non-work part of myself. I'm having like a weird allergic reaction in my eye right now. Like I don't know what the hell happened. part of me thinks it's dehydration because I had too much wine and it was really dry. Um, the wine, I mean, and it so severely like dehydrated me that my eyelids like just swole up. But also like maybe it was the shellfish that I ate, but I don't have a shellfish allergy, so I don't really know where it came from. But genuinely, it was so bad this morning that Brownie took a look at my face and he was like, "You cannot stream with that face." And then somehow my eye has like stopped swelling up enough that I can stream now. But if my eyes look a bit weird today, it's because it looked like somebody punched me in the face a couple hours ago. So maybe it's the shellfish. I I I don't know. I really like eating shellfish. But yeah, that's not what we're here to talk about. I did feel like I needed to preface though, because like anybody who's used to seeing my face, suddenly my eye has ballooned up like twice its size. What were we talking about? Right, we were
Your
doing
introduction.
intros. We were doing intros. But yes, last bit of housekeeping before we jump into like hyperfixations of 2024, right? So, as per usual, with all the podcasts that we record on the channel, you'll notice that a lot of our chat readings are turned off or muted. So you might see some alerts appear, but there will be no sound, and this is by design. Because later all of the podcasts that we record here on Twitch will immediately be uploaded on my YouTube channel as a VOD. So we do encourage chat interactions, um, even though there's no like chat redeems and stuff, and we'll try to read out as many chatters as possible. But we do want to try and keep it to like chatters that are relevant to the conversations that's happening at the moment. So if you guys have like direct questions or like direct stories or anything you want to share relating to whatever's being discussed, feel free to share in chat. We'll try to read out as many as we can. But we just don't want to like disrupt the flow of the podcast by reading like too many unrelated messages like back to back. We're also trying to keep it under like 2 hours. So we'll see how it goes. So I explained earlier what a hyperfixation is. So why don't you give us an example, Sarah, by telling us about your first major hyperfixation of 2024? I think we had quite a few, but what was your big thing of 2024?
Can I just say first, it is very weird to be sitting on this side of the table, basically. Being a guest and not hosting.
Oh, do you
Um,
want to host? What the fuck?
nah, it's fine. I'm lazy. Anyways, yeah, I guess I could start with my first hyperfixation, which, if you guys follow my Twitter, you might have seen that I've tweeted a couple of times about Cthulhu, and it's not a joke when I say I have tried to insert Cthulhu into every single uni assignment that I've done this year. To give context or like a little bit of background as to why and
He's
how it
gonna spend
started.
the next like half an hour justifying the tentacle.
Yes. I mean, isn't that what the podcast is for?
Brownie immediately with the he likes the tentacles.
Hey, don't judge a man.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay,
So yeah, to give
proceed.
context as to why it all started was because the very first, I guess, major class assignment that we had was called Group Project Studio. Basically, you work with people from the different streams. So, for example, I'm in the design stream. We are grouped up with people from the tech stream and art stream to make a game together within 3 months, the one semester. And there's two of these classes, GPS 1 and GPS 2. The first class that we had was basically just make a 2D PC game. And the game idea that I initially proposed was a escape room game where you have to keep your cool to impress a girl that you are going out with. So it's a bit dating sim-ish, I guess, but it's like more puzzly and whatnot. Um, which was rejected. Um, but wasn't really because of anything else other than the fact that my teammate who proposed a game idea proposed a game mechanic idea where you have solitaire cards as your attack card. So imagine Slay the Spire, but with solitaire cards. And that's the reason why that game was chosen, because the lecturer was also like, what the fuck is this game idea? And when that game idea was chosen, we had a group discussion, and I was just thinking like, I wonder what the thematics is going to be and whatnot, which is my job as a designer. And I came up with the idea of the four horsemen, because solitaire cards or the normal playing deck of cards have four.
What do you even call
Oh,
it?
I can pick up the gnome.
Elements?
No,
Yeah, you can
suits.
pick up the gnome. Suits.
Yeah, so solitaire cards have the four different suits, right? So I was like, four suits, four horsemen. Why not? And then I started thinking to myself, like, okay, we have the four horsemen, similar to like Darksiders, right? How, who will be our big bad villain if we are playing as the four horsemen? And for some reason, my mind just went to Cthulhu, and I was like, okay, that sounds like a dumb idea, but it'll work. So we decided to go with that, and that basically spawned the meme known within our college friends as Darren Core. Because what started as an innocent Cthulhu versus the Four Horsemen, one of my artists decided to draw a very sussy looking Cthulhu. Let's just say he was bleeding from the lower stomach, he was hunched over, and his blood was white. You can make a guess of what that would look like. So even though I didn't tell him to draw that, I didn't tell him it was part of the storyboard or anything. He just drew it, and our lecturer saw it. And then because I was the design lead and I was the team lead, I was like, the lecturer just thought, yeah, that's Darren's idea. I was like, yeah, fuck it, whatever. So that's the very first game that had Cthulhu. The next game that we had, GPS2, it was what I proposed was is similar to Monster Prom, where it's a dating sim where you date characters who are monsters but humanoid, like vampires, werewolves, zombies, whatnot. But it is a roguelike dating sim where you play as Death and you are taking an exam, and part of your final exam as Death before you become Grim Reaper, essentially, right? Is that you need to first make a life before you can start taking life. So that was the whole general idea.
Can I just say that's so like I was there with you when you came up with the idea, and like I still don't know how far you're gonna take the whole like make a life thing.
Oh no, like it'll be suggested, but I can't actually make the whole cutscene because it's still under the uni's rights.
Got
But you
it.
know, it'll be like Death holding a baby kind of thing. Like it will be suggested that it happened, but I can't show it actually happening. That was the whole
Right.
idea.
So what you're saying is that if we make a Patreon for the podcast, we release the unedited cut.
I mean, there is no unedited cut. That's the thing, because we didn't start production for that.
I mean,
Because
we
sadly,
could.
my game did not be chosen again. Because my game wasn't selected, the lecturers chose another game. Because for GPS2, Game Project Studio 2, we had to make a 3D mobile game. The game that was chosen from our pitch, groups of pitches that we had, was basically a Monster Hunter Now, an action mobile game, but with Southeast Asian legends. And I kid you not, I was thinking for the longest time of like, we need a big bad villain. Like we'll have people who turn into monsters, but who is controlling them? And I
Oh, can I
jokingly
get
suggested
Cthulhu in
Cthulhu.
this?
That was my reasoning to get Cthulhu into the game,
Oh my
and I've
god.
been banned from my lecturers from that idea. Because okay, think of it this way, right? It's Southeast Asian. The monsters are Southeast Asian humans. Like they are people. They're historical figures. I like not Paramaswara, Hang Jebat from Malaysia. Like those are the characters that we wanted to like monsterify. And then
Yes.
I was thinking like, what if we make it Cthulhu, right? And then we can talk about it as if it's about colonization.
But like it's
It's a...
Cthulhu colonizing Hangjabat.
No, but it's Cthulhu colonizing the Southeast Asian region.
Bro.
Or like it's
That's
corruption
too far.
from the
That's too
Western
far.
influence.
You're telling me you want to sell the concept of Cthulhu being a metaphor for whitewashing.
Yes. I am not kidding. That was the reasoning for why I
Oh
wanted
my
Cthulhu.
god.
But the idea was rejected from the lecturers, expectedly. So that was fine, whatever. So yeah, that pretty much just like created the whole idea of Styra or Darren equals Cthulhu. Which after that, the semester after that, nothing happened because it was like a relaxed semester. We had other classes, no more group project studios. But what had happened was there was a few games that was released both on itch and one on Steam. Let me pull up. Yeah. So if you guys are curious what my very first game looked like, you can go to Steam and purchase a game called Menace from the Deep. It is very similar in terms
Oh
of how
yeah.
the gameplay mechanics is. And that came out like a couple of weeks ago, guys. I am not kidding. The moment it came out, I shared it to my lecturer. I shared it to everyone I knew. Then I said, "Oh my god, guys, this is the game that we could have made." On top of that, during the chill semester that I just finished recently, there was a couple of games that came out on itch.io that my lecturers sent it to me and said this is very Darren core, which my friends have now taken that into account whenever I suggest any gameplay mechanics.
Is it Darren core
Another
enough?
what Menace of the Deep
No, like
or like the questions that they ask, yeah, pretty
yeah.
much. That's what they ask. Or like they'll just say this is very Darren core whenever I suggest a mechanic. On top of that, another thing that spawned was the term Sundarin. I don't fucking.
Sundaren!
It came from the fact that I was sharing another Cthulhu-like game that someone else shared it to me, and then my lecturer replied on the tweet Sundarin. So yeah, that is my whole story with Cthulhu. It has not escaped me, nor will it escape me again because as much as I really want to add Cthulhu into my final year project game, I have been banned by my teammates to add Cthulhu, sadly. But out of spite, I will be making my own solo game, like a personal project, where I will have Cthulhu as the main villain.
Oh my god. Please have Sundaren Charm merchandise this Hera.
No,
That would be so funny.
no.
That would be so funny. Although I had sorry, apologies in advance. Or apologies belatedly. I'm a horrible host. GPS, like what he's been talking about, we know about it because we've been talking about it for like ages and ages. But for people who don't know how like the game dev courses are structured for UOW, University of Wollongong, they do this really
Where I'm
cool thing
studying.
where they have like students grouped together to basically form like a fake game studio
Do you want
for
me to sell it?
assignments. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, you're studying it.
So
You better know how
it's
to
my
sell it.
classes. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So GPS or Game Project Studio is, like I said, it's a combination of all three streams because within UOW's game development course, you can pick a specialization that you essentially start within the second year. So the first year is just you do basically all the courses, all the basic classes like introduction to game technology, which is programming, introduction to game art, introduction to game design, like very basic stuff. But towards the second year onwards, you have your own class streams. So for example, I'm taking game genre studies, multiplayer game design systems. Multiplayer game design, systems and mechanic designs. Very niche things. Whereas other classmates that are not within design classes, they'll take their own art classes like intro to 3D, 3D and animations, 2D animations. Whereas for tech, it will be like AI programming and whatnot. So within this, during your first semester of the second year, which is your fourth sem, because each year is 3 semesters for us. In your fourth semester, you have Game Project Studio where you will work with people from your batch, but from the different streams. Like Nat said, it will combine with the people from design, art, and tech, and then those people will be grouped up together, and then they basically have to make a game together within 3 months. Each game project that you make, you tend to have a pitching phase where each team will have to like pitch like 3 or 4 games. Then towards the end of the class, you have to repitch it as if you're pitching it to investors. So it's
It's a
I don't
simulation of like making a game, basically.
yeah, it's a simulation of making a game and running a studio, because on top of the more well-known things, like you'll have your design lead, your art lead, your tech lead, you will also need to volunteer someone as the project manager, which has to do all the paperwork stuff. Not do all the paperwork stuff, but keep track, make sure everyone's
Basically, kind
updating.
of like your head of studio position.
Yep, yep,
Hmm.
yep, yep. So that's one of the unique parts of UOW's classes, I would say.
So why Cthulhu? Why not literally anything else? Is it because you were already an emo edgy boy to begin
I
with?
think genuinely it all started with that dating sim game that Markiplier played a while back. What's that called? Brownie might know it.
The one
It's the one.
where
It's like the 80s
Sucker for
looking.
Love?
Suckers for Love. Yeah, yeah. I think it's because I was watching that video like relatively recently again, and I was like, huh.
Awakened something in you? What the fuck?
No, it did not
What's
awaken
the
something in me. It did not awaken something within me. I just got very curious as to Cthulhu being in our game. Like, not only have I started watching countless of hours of like the Cthulhu lore, right? The different monsters, the different types of monsters that they have. I have genuinely started reading the source material. I still have the tab open on archive.org, Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. I still have it open because I am genuinely reading it. Let's just say when I get interested in something, not in any weird way, just general interest, the more I'm
why
interested, the
why do you
more
have to preface?
I read it. Because I have to. Because people think otherwise, that's why. But yes, I love doing deep research into things, but Cthulhu definitely was very different because I generally don't read like the source material for things. Like I just read Wikipedia, see what other people are saying, and then call it a day. But Cthulhu is different.
He's built
I
different
think
too.
because I think because Dredge came out relatively recently, which also is very Lovecraftian.
Oh, dude. Can we briefly tangent into Dredge?
Sure,
Because
it's
this
your
game has been
podcast.
consuming my life. Also, what do you mean it's my podcast? It's our podcast.
Oh wait, let me confirm real quick. If I'm not mistaken, guys, if you guys have Epic, Dredge is still free on Epic if you guys want to claim.
I thought I
For the
changed to something
next
else today.
4 hours. Should be today still.
Ooh. But yes,
Wait,
please. I've
continue
sunken like
your
20
Dredge.
hours into Dredge like non-stop, and it's been a delight. Like, I mean, clearly I like games with manual labor because I keep coming back to Power Wash Simulator, but like Dredge has been a complete addiction. Like, I started playing it as a Pomo game, and I thought to myself that I was gonna just play it while I do co-working streams whenever I have like a video game break. And then I made the horrible mistake of opening it one day when I was just working offline. And then, without realizing it, I have finished the game's main story. I bought all the DLCs. I'm 20 hours into the game. I can't stop. So,
Oh wait, no, it's Ghost Runner 2 now. Never mind. Oh
yeah,
well, too late, chat.
the big hyperfixation for me is Dredge. Although I think for me it's more of the mechanics and less of the tentacles.
We don't judge here. It's fine.
I we judge a little.
You
Speak for
don't say that out
yourself.
loud, though.
Speak for yourself. I judge a little. We're here to judge each other and sing kumbaya. Everyone has something that they're into that they deserve to be judged a little bit for.
True.
Speaking of, no. Are you done with Cthulhu? I
Yeah, that's
genuinely though,
pretty
like,
much.
it is so fascinating to me because I saw the start to the end of or the ongoing saga of your like Cthulhu fascination. I wouldn't be surprised if we did like a 2025 recap and you're still talking about Cthulhu.
I mean, the fact that I'm gonna make my own game and I'm gonna have Cthulhu as my main villain, that's not gonna help my case.
Do you want to talk about? Is there anything to share about your game yet at this point in
Uh,
time?
I can share a bit because it was a very old game idea that I somewhat scrapped. Basically, it was the very first game that I wanted to make for my final year project. But because it was going to be a very personal, narrative-heavy game, my lecturer suggested not to do it, which is fair. So we decided to go with a different game idea. The idea of the game was about losing your sanity in a sense, because we wanted to make it a story about you going into a different city. I'm having to learn, the ins and out of the cities, the new workplace that you're working at, while still being hung up on the past,
Hmm.
which initially was going to be represented by an X within the game. So
Fun.
the battle would then be about you learning to let go of the X and trying to find new meaning within the new world that you're, or the new world, quote unquote, the new city that you're in. And that was essentially the whole premise of the game. And because it was going to be about, it was going to be about going insane. Why not Cthulhu again?
Oh my god. So it's Cthulhu the X.
Cthulhu is summoning the X.
Oh, wow.
You are not. You have not dated Cthulhu because Cthulhu has no physical body
Bummer.
in this world. I have to draw it. Okay, I don't want to. I don't want to draw that. I don't want to draw it just because I don't think I'll be good enough for it.
That's why you work with artist friends, so they can bring
Oh
your.
no, none of them want to work with me anymore because of Cthulhu stuff.
Oh no,
I have been banned by everyone about Cthulhu because nobody wants to draw
no.
Cthulhu anymore.
Oh
So
no,
if
that's not.
anyone in chat who's an artist would like to work with me,
Oh my god.
that wants
Yeah,
to
why
draw
not?
Cthulhu,
Yeah. Maybe you'll find the Cthulhu artist of your dreams through the podcast.
true. Hopefully.
Brownie, only a coward would be hung up on the physical embodiment of your significant other. Tentacles and all. So that was Sarah's hyperfixation of 2024. I guess it's time for me to talk about mine because we're taking turns. I had all that time. I had the entire half an hour to mentally prepare myself for talking about this, and yet I'm still not prepared. But I think if generally, like, this is how you know that something is a hyperfixation, that if I were to say literally anything else, I would have like a dozen people in chat saying like liar, that was not the thing you were into in 2024. There was only one thing you were into in 2024, and it was My Hero Academia. And I cannot explain to you why I suddenly fell back into My Hero Academia, except that it was probably a combination of several things, right? Because I followed My Hero Academia when it came out like 10 years ago. Like, I watched the anime and I read the manga. I just didn't follow up with it because there was too big of like a significant gap, and then I was also just not following a lot of anime and manga at that time. And then something happened this year. I think the thing that happened was generally I became super burned out this year, and then I had a lot of like events to work on, and I had no energy to stream. And previously, streaming was my outlet, which is why even when I was like introducing myself as a streamer before this, even though I've been streaming for 3 years, it doesn't feel like this year was even much of a streaming year because I just didn't stream much. I didn't play much games. I basically just did some co-working streams, and I wasn't here a lot. And then instead, what I was doing is I was offline catching up with My Hero Academia, and it just happened to be, I think, kind of like a good time, I think, to get back into it because the manga ended um like 2 months ago. The anime is in its second to last season, with the last season coming out like last end of next year. And I just got into it like really big time. And if I were to dive into it, I think it also is about like the kind of media that it is versus like what kind of other media was out there at the time. Because like it's almost an embarrassing thing, you know, to say that you're into this because it's just a typical sort of like battle shonen, with like a really like happy go lucky main character, and it's like a super cliche like underdog story, and I just like ate that shit up like fully. um and I don't know, it's, if you don't know what like My Hero Academia is about, it's about this kid whose name is Midoriya Izuku, or Deku, who is born into a world where everyone has some form of like, he's born into like the X-Men universe basically, where everyone has a mutation except for him, and he so desperately wants to become an X-Men, but he doesn't have a mutation and so he cannot. And that was like actually how even like Horikoshi, who is the manga author, like started off writing My Hero Academia, because he was a huge, or he is a huge, like Marvel fan and DC fan, and especially like X-Men. And so if you go into My Hero Academia, like reading or watching it with that context, the story suddenly becomes a lot crazier because suddenly you're seeing all these X-Men parallels in Boku no Hero Academia. And I had all of that in mind when I was um rewatching it and catching up with it, and it was just really cool. I just got really into it. And then I think it was the same with when like Baldur's Gate came out last year.
Yep.
Yeah, when Baldur's Gate came out last year, and it sort of became like the media that I hung up found myself like hung up on because I needed it. Like have you guys ever been into that like situation where you're in such a stressful place in your life that you just need to cling on to something that is stable? Like I know that sounds so almost like sad to say, but I think like that's how a lot of people like get into fandoms and get into like hyperfixations these days, and kind of like what made me want to start the podcast. Is because I think a lot of people these days, like life can be really turbulent and stressful, and you get into these fandoms which can really be like an anchor for you. And Baldur's Gate 3 was that for me last year, and My Hero Academia was that for me this year. And then the same way like Asterion was that for me like last year, Bakugou was that for me this year. I'm constantly thinking about this, but I'm never voicing it out because I always feel like it's too cringe. But
What? Okay,
now,
okay, okay, no, no,
wait,
no.
wait, wait.
Quick
Okay, what?
sidetrack. You have voiced it out. Just saying. Multiple
No, I
tweets. I will take screenshots and send it to you so you can edit into the video. Multiple tweets of you saying like, or I'm stressed out organizing this event that's coming up this weekend. Can you guys please show up with Bakugou fan merch or some shit? You've done that multiple times,
No,
okay?
but it's more than that, right? I've never gone into like the real reason of why. And maybe I have on like power washing sessions that are lost in the void because I never uploaded those VODs, right? And these are like 3 a.m. power washing sessions, right? But like with Astarion, right? And this is like tangenting, but like with Astarion, it was very different because and I was like thinking this to myself about how like different the characters were for me in like different points of my life and how much sense that makes, because like obviously I'm a fucking writer. I'm gonna be like fucking finding like narrative, you know, full circles within my own lives and my own fandoms, right? But like when I was looking at Asarian, like it was very much at a time when I felt like trapped in what I was doing and how busy I was. And so like experiencing his narrative of escaping that cycle was very cathartic for me, and more than just like cathartic because he looks good. But like cathartic because his narrative like resonated with me. I realize it's super different from like Bakugo this year, right? Where last year I felt more trapped, this year I feel a lot more. It's more about like, am I willing to like rise to the challenge of everything that's being thrown at me, right? Because if you, I don't know if you guys know what my life is like. If you're here, you probably do. But my life is extremely busy. It's been an ongoing process to sort of like alleviate some of that busyness, but it's still really like an ongoing thing. I think for like a couple of years to come, or maybe even for like the rest of my life, I'm gonna be doing more work than I should be doing, you know. But like ultimately, it's kind of the like life track that I've chosen because I want to do things that make a difference, and I want to do things that have meaning. And so I choose a path that is like more stressful than others. And so like every year I've sort of had like a different hurdle to climb, or different
Mm-hmm.
challenge to face in regards to like how I decide to face that challenge. I think it would be different if I was hung up on Astarion only for his looks, right? Then maybe I would still be into him now. But like because I was into Astarion for his narrative, and then his narrative was no longer serving me, and so I kind of moved on, and I got really hooked on the Bakugo instead. Who, like, if you guys don't know, this guy is like the ultimate sore loser, like asshole, has to win at things and won't like settle for anything less than perfect, and that kind of ended up being like what I needed to push through 2024, and probably what I'll need to push through 2025. But who knows, this might change. We might get into like another hyperfixation by the end of the year, but that ended up being like what My Hero Academia like meant to me. And it wasn't just Bakugo, it was like a bunch of other characters in the series as well, because everyone's sort of like striving to become a hero, you know, right, in that universe. And everyone has their own struggles to get there, and I find that there's a lot of like relatable stories in that, and it is cringe because it's shonen by I don't know. It helped me, so I'm not gonna pretend that I'm above it or anything. Because like
Yes.
when you get really into something, there's always that fear of like people are gonna judge you for your hyperfixation, right?
Yes.
But like if it's serving you one way or another, like in a positive way, then you tell us as you are cringe, but you are free.
Brownie's life motto.
Brownie's live motto. Oh god. But it is true though. I think I was a lot unhappier when I was like into things, but like trying not to be into things, because you're so fixated on like what would be like a cool thing to be into and stuff. But like no, I this year I've accepted. I'm just I'm just gonna be cringe. I'm gonna really like Bakugo. I'm gonna buy like a bunch of figurines of him. Um, I'm just gonna really, really get into this thing because it's serving whatever need I need it to serve at this point in time. And I think that's like what hyperfixations do for you know, or fandoms do for you.
Okay, so you mentioned your hyperfixation with Astarion being that during at that time of your life felt very trapped, and you relate strongly to Astarion's story arcs and whatnot. Why Bakugo then? And what feeling did you feel throughout the year 2024 that made you relate to Bakugo?
I mentioned this earlier, but I think it's genuinely like the sore loserness and like Brownie says, the perseverance of the character. I am not like a very positively driven person, right? I am not your Deku. I am not like the person who's gonna be like, let's do this out of the goodness of my heart. I'm way more driven by like anger and competitiveness and desire to win and to be the best and to do all these things and sort of like the things that I think people consider to be like a bit ugly as like characteristics to have, you know? I mean, if I think of other characters that are sort of similar to Bakugo in that sense, I would pull up like Oikawa from like Haikyuu. Like these are characters who are they just like want to be the best and they're kind of like elitist and yet their pride is so linked to this like very like tender point in their character. It has so much to do with like their self-esteem, with their like self-worth, and I love it when characters like explore that, and I see it very reflected in even myself. But I think specifically with like Bakugo because he's so like pun intended like an explosive character and I am an angry person that I ended up like gravitating towards him like a lot because like you don't often see the like angry asshole cocky like character be the winner, and you don't see them tend to see them in like hero positions, and you don't tend to see those like behaviors celebrated, and it felt like really cathartic for me because like I don't know what it was like for you, Sarah, but like for me growing up as a Chinese woman, you're not really allowed to have any emotions that are like considered kind of ugly, you know?
Mm.
Like it's not considered feminine, it's not considered like womanly. You're not allowed to lose your temper. You cannot be like quote unquote like ugly. You can't have ugly parts of your personality. But I have and I genuinely like am an angry person, and I get angry really quickly and I de-escalate really quickly, and maybe it's ADHD, maybe it's something else. It felt really gratifying to see it like represented in a character, and it sort of helped me get over the like negative stigma I had in my head over like, instead of focusing on, hey, maybe I shouldn't be like so angry and like ugly and all that all the time. Instead, like channeling that into, hey, I can use this anger and channel it back into like being competitive or being better at what I want to be better at. And it kind like Bakugo ended up kind of being that like character for me, that like medium for me to understand that. And
Yeah, I
also when I
wouldn't
was like,
understand that.
when I was really you would understand that. I don't think you're an
I
angry
mean,
person, Sarah.
I I realize I get angry. I do get angry, but not easily. Like if you genuinely piss me off, I am genuinely pissed off. But for the most part, I will just get annoyed at things. I'm like, fuck it, whatever. It's just people being stupid. But also in regards to the whole, you have to have this cutesy personality. You can't have any ugliness to you. Yeah, nah, I don't understand that. I'm a
As
straight
a
white male. What can I
man.
expect? I'm a straight white male.
Yeah, I think it's really funny for people who know the both of us. I think between us, people always characterize you as the like moody, emo, like sarcastic, annoyed one, and that is kind of the image that you project, Sundaran.
Yes.
But I think easily between us, like I'm the one you don't want to cross. Like
Yes.
I'm the one who will get like explosively angry, like chain me up, like because I will lunge at you like with murderous intent kind of thing. And my anger flares up like so easily, and I can use it to, for goodness, for good things, and for productivity and for competitive spirit, but it's also, just inherently there. Are you gonna use this as proof the next time?
What do you mean?
I see you
Proof of?
typing in chat. You're like, y'all heard that too, right? Like,
No, we're not talking about anything. It's fine. Go ahead. Go ahead.
right, right. But yeah, I think there's like multiple layers to why, like, this series and why that character was so resonant to me this year. But I think that covers the main gist of it. Oh, I also definitely had like a bunch of moments where I was really stressed out this year, and I was like, okay, what would Bakugo do? or like, I described it as like having, like Johnny Silverhand
Mm,
from Cyberpunk, and how he's
yep.
like a construct stuck in V's head. Like I had Johnny Silverhand in my head, but it was Bakugo like yelling at me to get shit done, and so I got a lot of shit done.
Or maybe it's just Net's mind being weird in general.
Maybe I need to like externally motivate myself to get things done, otherwise it doesn't get done. But yeah, that was my hyperfixation. Do we have time for another two, one from each of us?
We haven't even done half of this place.
We don't have to finish this today. Okay, your turn.
We have
Go.
time.
What's your
It's
second
only 10, 12.
hyperfixation of 2024?
So, for context, chat, when Ned and I were discussing like what we wanted to talk about, Cthulhu was a bit up in the air because it was going to be a continuous hyperfixation into my 2025. But we decided to still talk about it as my 2025 hyperfixation. The other thing that got me a waste, not to say waste of time, but got me really invested or like became my other hyperfixation earlier this year was learning about culture and history.
Great. You're making me sound great. Like at first you're like, "Oh, I got into this because of school." And then like I'm getting into like culture. I'm becoming a more cultured person. And I'm just like, I have this anime boy in my head. Great.
In my
Now I'm
in
the
my
crazy
defense,
one.
you did make it sound at least deep, talking about how it's because you relate to the characters during that time of your life. Whereas mine was just, yeah, Cthulhu just came to mind. I'm like, bet.
Bet.
But yeah, it kind of started with it. Okay, this is gonna sound very dumb, but it started with Cthulhu.
No shit. It started with Cthulhu. Continue.
It was past the time of deciding. It was already when Cthulhu was selected as the main villain for my game project Studio One. But then the question that came up to me was, what would the narrative reasoning of the game would be? So it's Cthulhu fighting the Four Horsemen. What what would be the reason that we're fighting, right? Apart from the fact that maybe they're just the two of evils. Like even in Darksiders, I've not played the game in a long time, nor have I watched it for a long time, but I remember that it was basically a battle between angels and demons. Because if anything, Cthulhu is going to be an astral being, and the Four Horsemen are going to be more angelic in nature. Cthulhu being like from outer space, that's what I mean by astral. And then the Four Horsemen being more religious beings or religious figures. I thought, why not we make Cthulhu religion? So if you don't know, there is a story in the Bible about the seven seals that when broken essentially marks the end of time or the start of the apocalypse. I can't remember which one. Because there's also the trumpets, which is also part of the seven seals. I can't remember which one is which. But regardless, the story goes that with the seven seals, each seal that is broken becomes there's a new like apocalypse that happens. So for example, if I'm not mistaken, the fourth seal or the third seal is when ghosts in white robes will roam around the streets. And I have also learned that the sixth seal, I think, or the fifth seal, I need to remember this. I need to I need to reread in this. But there's actually one that talked about the four horsemen, so I decided to just leave that there. But the change that I did was that one of the seals also summoned Cthulhu because turns out this whole seals thing is actually just a way to stop Cthulhu and the four horsemen from fighting because they are essentially fighting for a reset of the universe in their own image. And Cthulhu's reimagining of the world is a lot more chaotic than ours currently, which is just a reimagining of the Four Horsemen. Because even though the Four Horsemen are evil, they're not necessarily out to get us humans, in a sense. So that was the general idea. So I did a lot of reading about that, making sure I got the story right, which I completely forgot about now. Hehe, my bad. But that kind of started a very personal journey I have with reading because I never touched the book apart from like school textbooks when I was growing up. I hardly read books, even though my dad tried to force me into reading. I just never liked reading.
Which is wild because
And
both your parents are in academics.
oh yeah, fun fact: both my parents are teachers, both being English teachers as well. So
Oh man.
I only started reading things like 2017 when I was 18. Actually, no, when I was 19, I started reading. But even then, that was very. It wasn't fictional read. It wasn't non-fiction reading. It was a lot of reports because that was when I was studying marketing, and I was like, hey, I'm really curious on how people consume media, and that's the reason why I started reading like psychology and philosophy reports on media consumption and whatnot. But even then, that was very rare. I didn't read that much, nor was I really reading the whole thing, so to speak. Like I was just basically reading the summary and the synopsis to get the points that I want to get. But with the Cthulhu project that I worked on, it started spawning an interest in reading non-fiction for me. So that's why I say I've started reading Call of Cthulhu. Then even during our second project that we worked on, the Southeast Asian Legends Monster Hunter Go kind of game. I think I took like 2 whole weeks of just reading like on historical figures in the Southeast Asia region, specifically Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand was the third region we made. I can't remember. I think it was Thailand. Then I also read up about like cultural significant animals within those regions because then that would also play into how our monster designs are made. I also looked at the cultural warrior outfits, not cultural warrior outfits, but like traditional warrior outfits from the past and have that incorporated into our designs of the characters. What I had a lot of fun with was reading up on the characters itself. Again, I'm gonna butcher all of this because I generally can't remember them right now. Once I was done with the project, I just completely forgot because it was not a great project. We had complications within the team, but that's a discussion for another video. But the game that we had in mind was we had the first naval female captain from shit, I can't remember if it was the Philippines or Indonesia, but she was the first naval sea captain. Then we had Hang Jebat from Malaysia. Then for Thailand, we had a person who was known as the king of that time. Like he was one of the kings, but he was known as the king because he helped with the, not to say modernization, but he helped with the growth of Thailand or what became Thailand at that time. So yeah, a lot of reading from those characters, like understanding their background, understanding their reasoning. I even tried to look into like their early stages in life through blog posts and whatnot that I did not understand because they were in different languages, so I had to Google Translate them. But I tried my best, and I genuinely really enjoyed reading all those stories, which I'm trying to continue now, not just with the Call of Cthulhu, but I'm also reading up a book called What Video Games Can Teach Us About Philosophy. And another book, which I can't remember the title because my mom took the book, so I have not seen it in a while. It was a diary that got translated into English, and the diary owner is a mercenary within Malacca during Malacca's boom period, no, golden era. Yeah. So I've not touched that book, but the synopsis sounded interesting from reading the back, and the general idea of the book sounds very different and unique, which I like. So I'll be doing a lot of that. I'll be doing a lot more reading in the next month or so than I have been in the last, I don't know, 20 years of my life. But yeah, that's my other hyperfixation of this year. It's just a lot of reading about the different cultures.
But still Cthulhu.
Cthulhu spawned a different hyperfixation within me, which is the reading part,
Damn.
not anything else. Wink, wink.
Oh my god. Get out of here.
Okay, bye.
No.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
is
those are
there-
my hyperfixations
Is
of
there
this
a
year.
like specific area you're gonna be looking into?
Nothing that comes to mind, mainly because I'm very much aware that I don't know a lot of things. So even the question of where to start, I don't know. So apart from finishing the two books that I have, I might also just start walking into Kinokuniya and just pick up a random book that I find interesting. From there, start diving into different questions. Like the design, the philosophy through video games book did talk quite a few about older games that I really want to look into. I can't remember what the names of the games were because it's been a while since they touched on that game in the books. But I think one of it was like a moral conundrum similar to the whole train situation, right? Where you have the two tracks,
Yeah,
then if
yeah.
you switch the level, it'll go to the other one. So they made a game version of that, and pretty much it's just the trolley problem,
Yeah.
but in video game format. So they discussed about the results of that
I
a
remember that
bit.
game.
Yeah, so they actually did a research paper on it. So I wanna try find if
Oh.
I wanna see if I can find a research paper on it and read up on that. So like that's how my reading habit is. It's like I come up with a very random idea, I deep dive into it, and then I find a different thing, and then I deep dive into that, and then just start reading until the end of time. And that's how all my game ideas are. Or
I
that's
love
how I
that
built
though.
my game ideas.
Yeah. I mean, I just wanna go back to something that you said that I think is so poignant. There is a lot that you don't know, so you kind of just want to get started and expand on the things that you do know. And I think that's such a great attitude to have that like a lot of people I know these days don't. I think that's kind of why, I mean, not to tie it back too much into the podcast again, but I think why I love the idea of like deep diving into things like hyperfixations and getting to media and stuff like that is because I think we could all do with like more media consumption. I actually had a similar conversation with like a bunch of people, right? But the ones that were really memorable to me were the versions of this conversation that I had with like academics, basically like lecturers and people who work in the field and who are working on syllabus and dealing with like the younger generations. And one of the big concerns that they have about the younger generation is that they cannot speak, they have no opinions of their own, and they have no desire to form opinions. And their version of what um, constitutes an opinion is just seeing what other people have said about it online and then sort of regurgitating that. Like, what is the median opinion that everyone seems to be having, and then just having that opinion instead of forming their own. Um, or even worse, like just choosing not to engage or have an opinion on something at all, and it's becoming like increasingly common. And I think it's one thing to not want to participate in like internet discourse, right? But I think it's another thing entirely if like there's nothing that gets you up in the morning. There's nothing that you feel like passionately enough about to have an opinion on it.
Yep.
I think that's so scary. So
As
scary
a
that
older generation kid back in uni, I can confirm that is the truth. I had a few classes where I worked with a couple of my juniors,
wait,
and
just
I
to give some
hated.
context, like what is your age versus
Oh
your
yeah.
classmates' age?
So as of 27th of December 2024, I am a 99 kid, so
Today's
I'm
date.
25. Yeah, I'm 25 this year, but most of my classmates are about 19, 20.
That young.
Um, I mean, my batchmates now are obviously a year older. They're like 2 years younger than me, but there are a couple of classes where I had with the youngest semesters, where they're like either Sem 2 or Sem 3 students. So they are the younger ones that I've worked with. And I hated working with them because whenever I
Oh
asked them questions, they
no.
didn't answer me shit. And I'm like, you guys are designers. You guys are supposed to have an idea in mind. If you guys don't have ideas, what the fuck's your point as a what's the point of your role as a designer then? And on top of that, when they do have opinions or ideas, 9 out of 10 times it's just a really shitty idea. Like they are only saying it for the sake of saying something and not
Mm,
because they've thought about it, which pisses me off more. So this is my pet peeve within the juniors, right? As a designer, it is your job to bring ideas to life, to make the mechanics work, to make the mechanics fun. You need to have a reasoning for every single thing that you implement within a game. So, for example, why are you implementing a fishing mechanic within, let's say, Stardew Valley, or like why would you do this way instead of that way? Like every single thing must have a reason why. And that's one of the things that I've told my batchmates, at least, so at least they know how my brain works, and I've told them this is the reason why I do things. That every single idea that you give, there must be a reason why. Every color, every design feature, every clothing apparel must have a reason why. It doesn't have to be a strong reason, but we can look into it. But as long as there's a reason, it's fine enough for me. The juniors that I've worked with, or more specifically, two of them, both of them are design students. And granted, some leeway, they're only like Sem 3, I think, right now.
so
But
like,
they gave me
mm,
hmm?
that would be like first year. How many semesters do you have in a year?
Ending first year, yeah. It'll still be first year, but ending first year.
Oh, okay.
So there was this one class that I worked with them where they gave me a brief of the assignment is that we're supposed to make 5 levels because there's 5 people in one group, so one person make one level. And each level, each 5 levels are supposed to relate to each other as if you are building a video game together. So all 5 levels must match thematically, mechanically, aesthetically, and whatnot. What one of the designers suggested was a haunted house-esque, similar to like Resident Evil, was it 7 Village?
Okay.
The whole level taking place in a single house and whatnot. To me, it's already a dumb idea because it's very limiting, but fine, whatever. We can figure it out one way or another. But what genuinely pissed me off was when I asked her why are we making this or like what's the reason why she wants to do this. She just said, I don't know. Just felt like it. And
Oh
and I'm like
no,
okay, fine, whatever. You know, Sem 3 student, you're a junior, you don't know anything.
no,
I
not that
then
I don't
pressed
know.
then I pressed onto it of more I pressed onto the idea more like, okay, how do you imagine the level being? I don't know. And that genuinely ticked me off.
No, come
I'm
on.
like, do you even know what the fucking brief is? Do you even know what we're supposed to do? I obviously didn't say that. I was trying to be nice. As much as I was annoyed about that situation, I didn't want to be the mean senior. But I did tell them off. You guys are university students. And you guys are designers as well. You guys need to have a train of thought and a reasoning for every single decision that you make. Yada yada yada. This is the same story as well. I'm just fast forwarding it to the future, where after no one's done anything, I was like, okay, fine, fuck it. I'll plan the whole thing from scratch. I'll plan everything in an overall sense, and everyone just figures out themselves. So the final idea of the game is that you are trapped in a abandoned house. So think of it as Saw, but instead of a building that is unknown, it's just a house. Because we had to keep the theme of houses. And what I decided was, because a house is going to be very small unless you make it a mansion, which I didn't want to, why not we have two townhouses connected together, and then there are some parts of the wall, some parts of the houses where the walls between the houses are demolished, so you can at least go in between two houses, which also gives us more space to play, right? Which then she asked me when I proposed that idea. She asked me, why are we doing this? Does the rooms that we are following, because I followed a house layout and used that as the level plan layout, because I wanted to be
Mm.
lazy. Um, so there was a bunch of rooms that I told them, you guys figure out how to fill the rooms up yourselves. So then she asked the question of like, oh, do we need to fill up the rooms with gameplay mechanics, or can we just leave it empty and whatnot? And it really bugged me that she couldn't see the reasoning for the layout of the houses, because as a level designer, each level that you create is supposed to be somewhat harder than the previous one. Because if you make all the levels easy, the same difficulty, it's not going to be a very fulfilling experience for the players. So obviously, with that in mind, I had the idea of you're going down the house essentially. So the top floors will be smaller rooms because you know it's the top floor. But as you go down to different levels, you have more rooms to explore, more puzzles to solve. And she, for some reason, couldn't figure that out. One of my other teammates, who is one sem ahead of her, but he's a tech student. So I wasn't expecting him to give me this answer, but I'm happily surprised that he gave, because it looked like at least he had a designer's mindset, so to speak. And he understood that each floor is supposed to be more difficult than the other, and each level is supposed to be more difficult than the other.
Hmm.
And obviously, you don't have to fill the whole level with, you know, like 5 different puzzles, but you have to at least play the level out for the players to enjoy, or like plan the level out for the players to enjoy and utilize the space that you have. So yeah, that's one of my pet peeves that happened this year, even though this was supposed to be a hyperfixation podcast.
I think it's really related. And I mean this is like a podcast full of tangents. Anyway, it's a podcast for all our tangents. Don't make it anywhere
Yes.
else. No, but I think that's really valid. And if you wanna justify yourself further, I can link it to my next hyperfixation. Here's the thing, like My Hero Academia was so crazy for me this year that I barely have a second hyperfixation. And in a weird sense also, this was sort of like a hyperfixation that was like spawned upon by My Hero Academia. So like we kind of have like a similar story where like Cthulhu is like spawning something for you and like My Hero is spawning something for me. But like truly like I got so into My Hero Academia that I started writing fan fiction. Like and I generally I don't think I've ever thanked Brownie for like just egging me on to do it. But I started writing and I didn't stop until I wrote like 80K words. And I was like having this moment of like, oh my god, I still remember how to write. And then I started writing again, which is crazy to me. And that kind of is related to my second hyperfixation because when I started writing again, I started reading again. And so it kind of is also reading, but I think yours is definitely more like academic and mine's a little bit more in like just consuming media in general. Like a
Mm.
series that I've wanted to catch up with, but I hadn't. I finally got around to like reading it was Hank Green's sci-fi series, which I won't spoil too much about it. But it's the series is called The Carls, and it follows a young girl who gets catapulted into social media stardom when she is the first person in the world to document and upload online a video of a giant like Gundam that appears in her backyard or in her neighborhood basically. And here's the thing, it appears out of thin air It appears in New York. It appears simultaneously in, I can't remember how many other locations around the world, but she's the first person who uploads it to YouTube, and she becomes like de facto the most famous person in association with the Carls, right? Which is what it also ends up being called, the Carls, because like she names it, because when you're the first person to document something, you name it something, then you name it, you know. But it's fantastic. It's Hank Green's debut novel series. It is a story that I've described to multiple people as something that only Hank Green can write, because it combines every single thing that we know about him, as like a content creator, which is kind of funny as well, because like he is a content creator, and we know Hank Green from other things like his podcasts and his YouTube videos and his various businesses, and then he wrote a book that is a meta commentary on that, on fame, and like the sudden catapult to fame because of something completely wild, and then it also becomes like a big sci-fi plot, and it's just generally like a really good speculative fiction kind of book, especially if you're into like an imagining of how AI and robots could take over the world. Then you should read the book. And it's very, I think it's very self-affirming book about humanity. But that's all I'll say about the book specifically, because I do hope that some of you will read the book after this, and I don't want to spoil too much about it. But like the big takeaway I had from reading it was that, as somebody who's trying to write something, that a lot of the things that exist in media today is just like a culmination of inspirations that a person has had throughout their life. You know, like it's so clear to me with like Hank Green that this book is a combination of all his interests over the course of his lifetime. And I suspect if I knew, if other authors had like more social media presence like Hank Green has, like I would be able to see the same connections in their work as well. And I don't know, it just like overall gave me like a different view on creativity in general. And I think it's changed the way that I view even like indie games, right? Because I think you get so like, from the perspective of somebody who's trying to make something, right? You get so caught up in this idea of like, I'm gonna make something that is life changing. I'm gonna make something that is, that represents like society at large, and it's gonna impact the greatest amount of people, and like people are gonna be talking about it like it's Shakespeare 10 years from now. Like I want to make the Stanley Parable of like the next generation or whatever, right? But like forgetting the fact that anybody who is able to create something can make something that only they can make, if that makes sense. So like Stara is the only person that can make like a Cthulhu Hang Jabat game.
I've tried.
And
It is
et cetera, you
possible,
know.
but yeah.
I think it also just changed the way that I look at like art and media in general, because one of the bigger themes of the book, and not just that book but the one that I'm currently reading, the Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. Yeah, I've been like on a Green Brothers like binge read recently. When it comes to like anything, any content that like these two brothers like produce in general, I think features this theme a lot, about how there's like a lot of things that mankind has made that is in service of mankind, and there's a lot of things that exist now that serve economic benefit, or like maybe it makes our lives more comfortable, quality of life, right? But a lot of their work also highlights that there's a lot of value in things that maybe don't present an immediate value, that don't have economic value, that is just, you know, creation for the sake of creation, and it's something that only humans are capable of doing, and that makes us as a species valuable. It's a bit hard to to sum it up, and you know, when I timestamp this on YouTube later, I don't even know what I'm gonna put on the timestamp. It'll just be like
Creativity question mark?
hour, hour 1 minute 30. The value of humankind? Question mark. That's my
Uh,
hyperfixation. But yeah, I've generally been thinking about it, because like you get really like, I think because I've been in the marketing game for so long, you get really caught up in like what is marketable and what's not, that you kind of forget like well, for lack of a better phrase, different strokes for different folks. So if you're gonna be making something anyway, there's probably somebody out there who will like something that you're gonna make, and you kind of have to make it for the sake of just making it, and without thinking about whether it's gonna sell or not. And the more like creative people I talk to, the more people who have been in the game for like a long enough time, they all sort of like echo the same sentiment of like, yeah, you have to make something because you're passionate about it and you're interested in it. Because if you're making it because you want to make money later, then you're born in the wrong galaxy. Or whatever, you know?
You know who gives a great speech about that?
Who?
Sven.
What you're referring to
His Game
is
Awards.
Game Awards
His Game
speech.
Awards speech. Yeah. Make games that you want to make. At least for the developers.
Yeah.
For writers, write stories that you want to write or you want to read.
Yeah. And I guess I don't know if I would call it a hyperfixation. It's been a persistent thought, definitely. And I think as we're wrapping up like 2024, there's no better thought to have on your mind because or at least on the part of the internet that I've been on, there's been a real sense of jadedness with regards to like working in the creative field. I think that there's so many layoffs on the game dev side, so many people who just like put out great like web comics, who are trying to put out like art or make it as a freelance illustrator or anything, and they're all like struggling to get by because apparently the economy just doesn't really prioritize the arts at all. And then if you are making a living as an artist, you're one of the like top how many percent, right? And then it makes me think back to like some of the other things that have come out this year, like Look Back. If y'all haven't watched Look Back, right, it's another movie that like had me thinking about this a lot because I think in like trying times like this year, and I'm sure we'll still have these problems in 2025, you kind of need to have a reason to keep doing the things that you're doing. Otherwise, like, I mean, I don't think anyone will blame you if you stopped. But I think this is the point where you sort of like adjust expectations, I think. That if it's something that you are really into doing, whether it's making games or music or, you know, streaming or writing or anything else, like you're adjusting your expectations and thinking about like why you're doing it. I'm feeling a little bit reflective because you know when we did like the forecast Fridays, by the way, I don't think we like actually introduced it beyond beyond the fact that we used to play Fortnite while doing the podcast.
Yep.
But it was a way more like professional podcast, I guess. It was about like the
Some
streaming ecosystem and like social media trends and sharing advice and stuff, and
the content creation space is all. That was
yeah.
the whole podcast.
Yeah.
And as fun as that was, we realized that we wanted to explore other topics, which made it difficult to put it under the Forecast Fridays umbrella in a sense,
Yeah.
because it was very much a podcast about content creation.
And
And
I
sometimes we just want to talk random shit, like Cthulhu.
there is still room for like content creator advice and stuff like that, but I was starting to feel like all our conversations in that podcast were like starting to go in the same circle. Which is that
Yeah.
like no matter what you do for your content creator journey or whatever, it doesn't matter what you do. It always comes back to like mindset, and it's always about luck. And if you like strike luck, how do you capitalize on that luck? There isn't really a formula per se. So there's only so much, you know, advice we can dispense without it all just like eventually coming back to, hey,
Make content, post, get lucky.
yeah, really, really. So I'm hoping, you know, as we're sort of feeling out how we want to like do the structure of this podcast, I'm hoping we can eventually have like some guests on board to talk about their hyperfixations, learn a little bit more about what makes them care about it, and then maybe it's something that you can get into, or maybe it's something that will ignite some thoughts within yourself about the things that you like and why you like them, and maybe think about it more deeply than like, you know, this character is sexy. That's why I like it. Cause like I I don't know. I just want to encourage people to have opinions, man. I just want people to like look at themselves a little bit deeper and be like, I like this because of this, and not just like I like this because everyone else is into it as well. Or
Have a reasoning. Always ask yourself why.
I think it can be a bit of pressure for like people who aren't used to like looking at themselves that deeply. And it sounds a little bit insulting when I say it like that, but I generally mean it because I've met a lot of people who don't they don't practice a lot of like introspection. Like when you ask them why, they have no answer. You can ask them why about anything, like why they like this character or why they like that thing or why have they chosen to do this over that, and they cannot for the life of them give an answer. And that's what worries me about people sometimes. Like not only is that conversation dead in the water, but also like how do you do things without having a reason? I don't know.
Like what Brownie said, don't be shallow, be deep.
Damn. Just like where the tentacles came from.
No
But
comments.
with that, shall we wrap up for the day? I wanted to end it since it's 2024. It's our last, well, it's our first podcast recording, but also our last session of 2024. And like the new year is on everyone's minds, and we're all feeling reflective. Do you want to share New Year's resolutions? And if chat, if you have New Year's resolutions, please share them. We would love to hear, and please include your whys if you have whys. And we'll give you time to type because we'll start with ours.
Goals of 2025. I have a very ambitious goal. I'm finishing up my degree essentially this year, right? December is when I officially graduated, but I'm doing my internship in September, which is the last semester. So basically, after internship, basically just jump straight to work. What I want to achieve, basically in September, is that I want to apply for an internship with Larry in Malaysia. I would be very
Manifest.
I will be very happy if I get the interview. If I don't get the internship, it's fine. I just want the interview. Purely because I want it to be more of a learning experience. Because I want to know what they are looking for. Because ideally, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years down the road, I would like to work at Larian for multiple reasons, right? One of the bigger reasons, the more obvious one, is the fact that they are essentially developing games that I would like to work on. Games that are narrative heavy, gameplay heavy, RPG-esque, very rich in character story and whatnot. And those are the things that I want to do. I want to do a lot of narrative stuff, especially with characters. Hopefully, one day I'll work at Larian. That'll be very nice. I would love to do that, especially within the narrative department if possible. My more realistic goal is to have the internship with them. Oh, sorry, not internship. To have the interview with them, because even if I don't pass, at least they would know that I am very interested in working with them. So when the time comes, because everything comes down to like timing and opportunity, if they have the space for in the narrative department, then I would be more than happy to apply and work there afterwards, kind of thing. Another goal that I do have in mind is I would like to start development and finish development of a game by myself, which is the game that I was talking about, right? The whole craziness, you going to a different city, you going crazy, yada yada yada. It's definitely more of a narrative game, so similar to like A Space for the Unbound and Until Then. And the reason why I want to do that is because the end of the day, I want to be a narrative designer purely because without a good narrative hook, how are you going to get players engaged with the stories? I think one of the reasons, and this is going a bit deep dive on myself, but I'll just side tangent real quick. One of the reasons why I didn't really play that many games was because I wasn't really intrigued with the world of the game. One of the games that I've played a lot this year, according to Steam Recap, was 7 Days to Die, Project Zomboid, and RimWorld. Project Zomboid and 7 Days to Die is a zombie apocalypse game, which I genuinely love. Like, I would love to have a narrative game in the zombie apocalypse setting, similar to like The Last of Us. Great game. And RimWorld, on the other hand, was a unique experience for me because although it doesn't have a overarching narrative main character protagonist thing, it is a colony sim set in a rim world or like an outer space planet, and you basically create your own narrative there because you do have the characters who have different habits, different traits, who do, fall in love with each other and start hating each other, and it kind of creates your own narrative experience of the game where you relate, you the player character, you the person who's playing it can relate, can antagonize, can love each different individual characters. And that's the reason why, apart from the fact that it's a fucking management sim and I'm a nerd for it, that's also the other reason why I loved Rimworld compared to other management sims. Narrative, overarching narrative is a very important part of gameplay for me, which is why I also finished Nine Souls, is because it is a story about a future. This was something I didn't really realize until I played it, because I looked at the art, looked at the character designs, I thought it was cool.
It's
But
very
I've
traditional, yeah.
yeah, and I've learned that the game actually is set place in a future, which I didn't even know. But like, it's the future where Tai Chi is part of the science, kind of thing.
Nice.
Like, it's a mixture between historical culture and futuristic technology, a combination of that, and it was a very cool concept to play. And the story of, not to say self-discovery, it was more about owning up to your mistakes and taking care of the people who loves you and takes care of you. It's a very traditional Asian story in a sense
Because it's
of
Chinese
like,
developers.
yeah. So it was really interesting to play that for me.
I mean, look at the story for like Devotion. Devotion was a you
Oh
played
yeah,
as
yeah,
the
yeah.
father figure who was like failing his family, and like they were putting their child through like this child star route, and she was miserable and etc. etc. But yeah, Nine Souls is from the same developers as Devotion, but it's a platformer, action platformer. So it's quite
2D
a
action
pivot,
platformer
but it
Metrovania
has
game.
extremely good reviews.
I'll give it a 9.5 because some of the boss fights are a bit unfair, but apart from that, it's good. Two of the boss fights specifically. But yes, what about you, Nat? What are your goals for 2025?
Well, I've been not so secretly working on a book, so I want to finish first draft in 2025. And then part of the effort is also sort of like reducing the amount of work on my plate, because there's no way I'm gonna be able to finish this book if I keep up the amount of work that I had on my plate in 2023 and 2024. So actually, with the transition to the new year, I'm working on like delegating away a bunch of my work and transitioning my role in the Magic Rain a little bit more. So hopefully, you'll see me here a little bit more. I don't think my content will change too much though, but maybe like instead of working during co-working, I'll be like writing a bit. I've been making some steady progress on that. Actually, it's kind of been a, it's this my progress has been a little bit halted because I'm rewriting some parts.
Bruh.
Yeah, I'm trying to find like the bones of it so that I can like comfortably proceed with the rest. Basically, trying to find my like narrative voice in it before I write more of it, because anyway, I won't dive too much into it. And I think the other one is just with more time, I'm hoping to catch up with more media, because I mean, it's always been clear to me that you cannot produce good media without consuming good media. And so I want to get back on like fulfilling my backlog of games and books and TV shows and movies that I haven't watched recently. I'm not necessarily doing it just for the ability to write the book, but I think just in general, like it's definitely like a different headspace when you're trying to like make something original and then seeing what's out there, and then having being inspired by work that other people have put out there. And even if they're very different genres or very different like approaches, like every single thing that you consume can teach you something. And so I want to go spend a little bit more time on that. I think just in general, like I'm gonna get really busy towards the middle and the end of 2025 as usual. So I'm trying to see how much like how much I can balance in the coming year. It's always kind of a difficult question for myself to answer because I always go into it with like so many hopes of like being able to have things a little bit more in control for the coming year, and then not being able to because of the sheer amount of work that comes in. So it's, I don't know, all I can say is like it's an ongoing thing, and at the very least I want to finish first draft. And then when it's done, I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do with it. Honestly, probably like send it to a bunch of people and see what they think, and then I don't know. If they think it's good, maybe I'll like pitch it to some publishers, or like I'll self fund publish it myself. My sister learned how to bind books recently. Did you know that? She went
Yep.
for a book binding workshop, and so maybe I'll just print it out on nice paper and get her to bind it for me,
Yeah,
just so
bind
I
a
can have
hundred
like,
books together, right?
no, I'll just have like one copy for my closet, and then I'll start on the next one.
Bruh.
I don't know. I think that's kind of my mindset now, and I mean it's always been my lifelong dream to like write some like a book from start to finish, but I was always like so held back by the pressure of like whatever I release has to be like really fucking good, and you have this sort of like mental block of like, I whatever I release is gonna be like the only thing I release in my life. Like if it's the only thing I ever release in my lifetime, it better be freaking good. But then I'm trying to like divorce myself of that mindset, and I just want to get through with it. I want to see it through start to finish, and it doesn't even have to be great. I mean, I will write it so that it's good. I'm not gonna like hold back or anything, but at the same time, I don't really. I'm trying not to place like expectations on it like that. I just want to write it for the sake of it existing, and then I want to move on to the next thing, because if I work on more things consistently, then I'll have more chances to do things. And as I keep doing the same thing, I'll eventually get better at doing the thing. But there's no easy first step to doing the thing. Like if I want to write a book and I want to eventually write something that will make people go like, wow, right? I will have to put in the
Wow.
practice like somewhere. And if that means I have to write like 10 shitty books, then I'll write 10 shitty books first, because you have to practice somewhere, right? And so that's
Yep.
kind of like my mindset right now. And then I think also with like trying to do it for the first time, because it's a medium that I'm not as familiar with compared to, let's say, like article writing or review writing, right? Like writing a long form narrative thing that's like 80 to 100K words is really different. So it's almost like training grounds as well. So like I'll get used to writing narratives and then take it from there, I guess. And I guess we can look back on this at the end of 2025 and see whether we kept up with it. Yeah, I forgot to
Oh.
mention this earlier, but totally born out of my hyperfixation of like Bakugou, right? Is I commissioned Tala to like draw like my mental image of like Bakugou looming over my shoulder and nagging at me for the entirety of 2024. And like I think by the time this episode goes up, it'll be done. So I'm gonna like put the artwork here so y'all can see it. Um and yeah, that's all. We're currently planning for hyperfixations to be like a monthly podcast to give us some time to get more like hyperfixations and to get some guests on board. You know what I mean? So like, and we're still fine tuning the structure, so we'll see how it goes. Um, but I'm liking what we have so far. It's been fun. I will be. We'll let you know where we do the next episode on Twitter and on Blue Sky. And if you missed the live recording, we'll always post it on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in to the Hyperfix Station. Oh,
Haha.
I came up with that on the spot. I'm so good. Okay, we're gonna go rate Justin.
No comment.